Absolutely. Here's part 1 expanded to around 1,300 words, written in simple, clear, and engaging English, as you requested. The preparations for the grand wedding had taken over the entire mansion. Every corner of the house seemed to hum with excitement and nerves. Armin, the young millionaire, was getting married to Sophia, a beautiful woman from a wealthy and influential family. People from both families and many guests from the city were expected to attend. Workers moved back and forth, decorating the halls with fresh flowers, shining the silverware, and making sure every detail was perfect. Sophia was at the center of it all, dressed in the latest fashion, her hair styled perfectly, and her voice often rising above the chatter as she gave instructions. She wanted everything to be flawless. It was her dream wedding, and she did not want anything to go wrong. Sometimes, she became impatient, especially when things moved slower than she liked. When the cake delivery was delayed by 20 minutes, she called the bakery 3 times. If the flowers were a shade lighter than she wanted, she asked the florists to bring new ones. Her friends watched her with a mix of admiration and nervous laughter, not daring to point out her harsh words or cold tone. Among the many workers in the house was an older maid named Mrs. Farida. She was a quiet woman, hair sprinkled with gray, her sari always simple and neat. She walked softly, never calling attention to herself, but she always noticed everything that needed to be done. If a flower fell from a vase, she picked it up. If a guest looked lost, she showed them the way. She did her work carefully, making sure everything was clean and in its place. The other maids sometimes whispered about her. Some said she had worked in the house for only a year, but nobody knew much about her past. She was respectful to everyone, but kept her distance. As the wedding grew closer, the house felt busier each day. Sophia's demands became sharper. She wanted the curtains changed twice in one morning because they did not match her dress for the pre-wedding photos. She sent the gardener back to the flower market when she saw one wilted rose. The workers, most of whom depended on their jobs, obeyed her instructions without protest. But some exchanged worried glances when she was not looking. One day, Mrs. Farida was asked to polish the silver trays in the main dining room. It was a big job and would take most of the afternoon. She moved quietly, rubbing each tray until it shone. While she worked, Sophia entered the room, talking on her phone. She barely noticed Mrs. Farida, except to scold her about not moving quickly. Enough when she wanted to sit down. Mrs. Farida apologized softly and shifted to another corner, working silently. When Armand entered the room, the atmosphere changed. He was tall and polite, with a calm way of speaking that made people feel comfortable. He greeted everyone by name, even the maids and gardeners. Whenever he saw Mrs. Farida, his eyes would linger for a moment longer, a gentle and almost sad expression passing over his face. He asked her if she needed help carrying anything heavy, and she always smiled and shook her head, grateful for his kindness, but careful not to draw attention. Nobody noticed the small exchanges between Armand and Mrs. Farida, except perhaps the head cook, who once saw Armand secretly slip a box of sweets into the kitchen for her. The cook said nothing. In a busy house, everyone had secrets. One evening, after a long day of cleaning, Mrs. Farida sat alone in her small room at the back of the house. She took out an old photo from her bag of a younger Armand with a woman beside him who looked very much like herself. She touched the photo gently and wiped away a tear. She had chosen to keep her identity hidden, even though it hurt, because she wanted what was best for her son. She believed Armand would have a better life if nobody knew who she was or where she came from. But she could not stop herself from watching him proudly, especially when he smiled or did something kind. Armand was a good man, and she hoped he would always stay that way. The next morning, the house was buzzing again. Sophia wanted to rehearse the wedding procession. She insisted that all the staff stand in line and do their jobs perfectly. Mrs. Farida was asked to carry the flower petals for the bride's path, a small but important job. Sophia looked her up and down and frowned. "Make sure you do not drop any petals," Sophia said sharply. "I want every step to be perfect. If you can't handle it, tell me now." Mrs. Farida nodded, her hands steady.
Oh.
Tone. The other staff felt sorry for her, but did not dare say anything. During the rehearsal, a few petals slipped from the basket as Mrs. Farida walked. Sophia immediately noticed. "Can't you even do a simple job?" Sophia snapped. "Them up. Do it again properly this time." Mrs. Farida quietly bent down and picked up the petals, repeating the walk as asked. The guests and staff looked uncomfortable, but Sophia did not notice their faces. To her, perfection was all that mattered. Armand walked into the hallway just as this happened. He saw the way Sophia spoke to Mrs. Farida and felt a heaviness in his chest. He waited until Sophia was distracted, then walked over and helped Mrs. Farida up. "Are you all right?" he whispered. She nodded, giving him a reassuring smile. "Yes, Beta. I am used to hard work." He squeezed her hand gently before walking away, his mind full of worry. As the week went on, the stress in the house built up. Sophia's parents arrived, bringing more expectations and opinions. There were arguments over the guest list, the food menu, and even the color of the napkins. Through it all, Mrs. Farida worked quietly, doing her best to keep the peace. She helped everyone. Whether it was carrying heavy trays for the cooks or sweeping the back steps late at night, sometimes, late in the evening, Armin would find a reason to visit the kitchen. He would sit with Mrs. Farida and talk about small things, the weather, the food, his childhood memories. She listened with love, always careful not to cross the invisible line between them in public. He wished things could be different, but he honored her wish to keep her identity secret. Sophia, meanwhile, became more demanding as the wedding day drew near. She ordered the maids around, changed her mind about decorations, and even shouted at the driver for arriving 5 minutes late. Her friends noticed her mood swings but said nothing, afraid of her sharp tongue. One evening, as Mrs. Farida finished mopping the marble floors, she paused to look out the window at the wedding tents being set up in the garden. She remembered when Armand was a little boy, running across those lawns, laughing as she chased him. Life had changed so much since then. She wondered if Armand was truly happy, and if this wedding would bring him the joy she hoped he would find. But deep in her heart, Mrs. Farida knew that something was not right. She could feel it in the air. Something was about to happen that would change everything. Not just for her, but for the whole family. And so, she went to bed that night with a heavy heart, praying for strength to face whatever came next. Let me know if you're ready for part 2 or want any changes. Of course, here is part 2 expanded to around 1,300 words, written in simple, clear, and engaging English as you requested. As the wedding day came closer, everyone in the mansion could feel the pressure growing. The decorations, the food, the music, everything had to be perfect. The house was filled with guests, family members, and workers moving in and out of rooms, carrying flowers, plates, or trays full of delicious snacks. Sophia's parents watched everything closely, making sure their daughter's wedding would be the grandest event of the season. Sophia, always at the center of attention, grew even more demanding. She barely slept, worrying about each small detail. She changed the flower arrangements 3 times in one day. She insisted that every plate, every fork, and every glass be checked and cleaned again and again. When something was not exactly as she wanted, her voice became sharp. She called for the staff, her words quick and cold, her instructions impossible to please. The maids whispered to each other in the kitchen, careful to keep their voices low so Sophia would not hear. Even the cook, who had worked for years in big homes, said quietly, "I've never seen a bride so worried about everything." She is not even smiling. But no one dared to say these words to Sophia's face. Mrs. Farida, as always, worked quietly. She was tired, but she never let anyone see her pain. She woke before dawn to sweep the front steps and stayed late to clean the silverware after everyone else had gone to bed. Sometimes her hands ached from carrying heavy pots or scrubbing the floors, but she only paused for a moment before continuing. One afternoon, the kitchen was especially busy. The cooks were preparing a large lunch for the family and their guests. The air was full of the smells of spices, fried onions, fresh bread. Mrs. Farida helped the young maids. chopped vegetables, and set the long dining table with sparkling glasses and plates. Everyone moved quickly, wanting to finish before Sophia came in to inspect. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the kitchen. A young maid, nervous and tired, had slipped and dropped a heavy tray full of dishes. The plates and cups shattered on the floor, sending pieces everywhere. The kitchen fell silent, everyone staring at the broken mess. At that very moment, Sophia walked into the kitchen, her high heels clicking against the tiles. Her face turned red with anger when she saw the mess. What happened here? Her eyes searching the room, the young maid who had dropped the tray stood frozen, tears in her eyes. But Mrs. Farida stepped forward, already kneeling to pick up the broken pieces. Sophia's eyes landed on her. Without waiting for an explanation, Sophia raised her voice even more. How careless. This is the third time I've seen you making mistakes. Can't you do anything right? She scolded, her words loud enough for everyone to hear. The other workers looked away, afraid to meet Sophia's angry gaze. Nobody wanted to be next. Sophia, her patience gone, moved closer to Mrs. Farida, who was now picking up the sharp pieces with her bare hands. Stand up. You're too slow. You should know better at your age, Sophia said sharply. Then, in her anger, she waved her hand, and her bracelet accidentally caught Mrs. Farida on the arm. It wasn't a strong hit, but the shock made Mrs. Farida pause. A heavy silence filled the room. The young maid started crying softly. The cook tried to say something, but Sophia was already gone. Leaving the kitchen in a storm of anger, Mrs. Farida picked up the last pieces, her hand shaking a little, but she did not say a word. After Sophia left, the other maids gathered around Mrs. Farida, offering her water and kind words. Are you all right? They asked, their faces full of worry. Mrs. Farida smiled and nodded, brushing off their concern. I am fine. Don't worry about me. Let's clean this up before the next meal, she said gently. Her voice was steady, but inside she felt a deep sadness. That evening, word of the kitchen accident reached Armand. He was in his study, going over some work documents when one of the younger maids came to him, her face anxious. Sir, I think you should check on Mrs. Farida. She had a difficult day, she said quietly. Armand immediately put away his papers and went to the small servants' quarters at the back of the house. He knocked softly on the door. Inside, Mrs. Farida was rubbing her arm where Sophia's bracelet had scraped her skin. She looked up and quickly tried to hide her pain when she saw Armand. Are you all right, Amy? He asked in a low voice, using the word for mother with love and care. He checked her arm, his eyes full of concern. Mrs. Farida tried to smile. It's nothing, Beta. I have had worse. It will heal. Please, don't worry about me, she whispered, not wanting the other workers to overhear. But Armand was upset. He sat beside her and listened as she told him what had happened. She explained that Sophia was under a lot of stress, and maybe she didn't mean to hurt anyone. People change when they are under pressure. Maybe she will be better after the wedding, she said kindly, always choosing to see the best in others. Armand held his mother's hand, his mind full of worry and questions. He thought about all the times he had seen Sophia treat others rudely, but this was different. Now it was his own mother who had suffered. He wondered if he was making a mistake by marrying Sophia, but he also knew that his mother didn't want him to be unhappy. She wanted him to have a good life, even if it meant hiding her own identity. That night, as the house grew quiet, Armand remembered his childhood. He remembered how hard his mother had worked to raise him after his father died. She had always put him first, making sure he had food, clothes, and an education. She never complained, even when life was difficult. Now, seeing her treated this way, felt a pain in his heart he could not explain. Meanwhile, in the big guest room upstairs, Sophia was surrounded by her friends, complaining about the staff. If they can't do simple things, I'll just have them replaced, she said, her voice cold. Her friends nodded, not wanting to disagree with her. In the servants' quarters, the other maids spoke in hushed tones. Did you see how she treated Mrs. Farida? It wasn't fair, one whispered. Mrs. Farida is always so kind. She doesn't deserve this, said another. They all agreed, but knew there was nothing they could do. The next morning, things seemed normal again on the surface, but under the calm, everyone was tense. The staff moved quietly, avoiding Sophia as much as possible. Mrs. Farida kept working, her arm wrapped in a thin cloth, her face as calm as ever. Only Armand noticed how she winced every now and then. In a quiet moment, Armand found his mother in the garden, picking up fallen leaves. He sat beside her, watching the sun rise over the wedding tents. "Amy, I wish things were different. You shouldn't have to hide who you are. You deserve respect," he said softly. Mrs. Farida smiled at her son, her eyes full of love and forgiveness. "Beta, you are my happiness. I chose this life because I wanted you to have a better one. No matter what happens, remember that kindness is more important than pride." She replied. Armand nodded, his heart heavy but full of respect for his mother. He promised himself that he would protect her, no matter what happened next. He knew the wedding would change everything, but he did not know how much. He could only hope that the truth would come out in a way that would bring his family together, not tear them apart. As the sun climbed higher and the house filled with guests, Armand watched Sophia from a distance, wondering if she could ever learn the lesson his mother had lived her whole life, that real strength comes from kindness, not power. And somewhere deep in his heart, began to hope for a miracle. Let me know if you're ready for part 3 or want any changes. Of course, here is part 3 expanded to around 1,300 words, written in simple, engaging English, keeping the story interesting and appropriate. The wedding day finally arrived, and the entire house was awake before sunrise. Every room was filled with the sound of laughter, music, and footsteps as people prepared for the big day. Guests dressed in colorful clothes, some putting on jewelry, others helping children with their outfits. The kitchen buzzed with activity as cooks worked fast to prepare breakfast and snacks for everyone. Outside, gardeners made sure the flowers looked fresh and beautiful. While decorators put the final touches on the entrance gate and the big tent in the garden, Sophia was the busiest of all. From the moment she woke up, she checked every detail herself. She tried on her wedding dress again, then asked her friends to help her with her hair and makeup. She looked in the mirror and felt proud, but inside she was also nervous. Everything had to go perfectly. She wanted people to remember her wedding as the grandest one they had ever seen. The family's elders gathered in the main hall, greeting important guests and offering tea. Armand spent his morning with his father's old friends, listening to their advice and stories about married life. "Got you." He smiled and laughed when he needed to, but his heart felt heavy. He glanced around the room, hoping to catch a glimpse of Mrs. Farida. She was nowhere in sight. He hoped she was all right after what happened the day before, in the servants' quarters. Mrs. Farida got ready for the busy day ahead. She put on her clean uniform and covered her hair with a simple scarf. Her arm still ached from the accident in the kitchen, but she ignored the pain. Today, she was responsible for welcoming some of the older guests and helping set the tables for lunch. She wanted to do her work quietly and stay out of trouble. As the sun climbed higher, more and more guests arrived. Expensive cars lined the driveway. The sound of laughter, music, and camera shutters filled the air. Sophia checked every little thing, making sure the petals on her walkway were perfect, the chairs straight, and the plates sparkling. She scolded the florist for bringing the wrong color roses and snapped at a maid for being slow with the juice. Her mother tried to calm her, saying, "Don't worry, dear. Everything looks beautiful," but Sophia could not relax. Meanwhile, the maids moved quietly, trying not to make mistakes. They whispered about the grand decorations and the guests' fancy clothes. But their eyes were on Sophia, careful not to cross her path. Mrs. Farida did her best to help everyone, moving quickly, to carry water for the guests and fix anything that went wrong. Some guests noticed her calmness and smiled at her, but most were too busy enjoying the party to see the hard work behind the scenes. Just before the wedding ceremony, the family gathered in the main hall for lunch. The long table was full of delicious food, and everyone praised the cooks. Armand sat near his friends, trying to hide his worry. He looked at Sophia, who laughed loudly with her friends, showing off her diamond jewelry and new dress. He wondered if she would ever change. During lunch, one of Sophia's friends asked, "Sophia, how did you get everything to look so perfect? The staff here must be very good." Sophia laughed and answered loudly, "You have to be strict, otherwise they become lazy. Yesterday, one maid made a big mess in the kitchen, and I had to teach her a lesson. Some people never learn unless you show them who's in charge." Some guests felt uncomfortable but said nothing. A few exchanged nervous glances, but nobody wanted to get involved in a family matter. In a quiet corner, the family's eldest aunt listened to Sophia's words. She was a wise woman who had seen many weddings and many families rise and fall. She frowned, remembering the kindness of Mrs. Farida and the way Sophia had treated her. She decided that enough was enough. After lunch, while everyone prepared for the main ceremony, the elder aunt walked into the kitchen. She found Mrs. Farida cleaning a silver tray. "My dear," the aunt said softly, "would you please join us in the main hall for a few minutes? I want to introduce you to some of the guests." Mrs. Farida was surprised, but nodded respectfully. She washed her hands, straightened her scarf, and followed the aunt into the main hall. The guests turned to look, wondering why a maid had been invited to join them. Sophia saw Mrs. Farida and frowned. "Why is she here?" she whispered to her mother. The aunt raised her hand for silence. "Everyone, I want you to meet someone very special. This is Mrs. Farida, who has worked hard to make this wedding possible. I think you should all know her story." Before anyone could interrupt, Armand stood up. His heart was beating fast, but he knew the truth could not stay hidden forever. He looked at his mother, then at the guests. "There's something you all need to know," Armand said, his voice trembling. "Mrs. Farida is not just a maid. She is my real mother." A shocked silence fell over the room. Sophia looked at Armand. "Confused, what are you saying?" she asked, her voice small. Armand took a deep breath and continued. "My mother is the strongest, kindest person I know. After my father died, she worked hard to raise me, even when we had nothing. She chose to work here quietly, without telling anyone who she really was. She did it because she wanted me to have a better life. I promised her I would respect her wishes, but I cannot hide the truth anymore." He turned to his mother, tears in his eyes. "I'm sorry I let this go on for so long." The elder aunt put her arm around Mrs. Farida and said, "We all owe her our respect. No one in this house has worked harder or with more love." The room was so quiet you could hear the birds outside. Sophia looked down at her hands, embarrassed and ashamed. The guests whispered to each other, shocked by the revelation. Some people who had ignored Mrs. Farida now remembered her gentle smiles and quiet ways. Armand's words changed everything. For the first time, people saw Mrs. Farida not as a servant, but as the heart of the family. The other maids stood at the back of the room, wiping tears from their eyes. They had always respected her, but now everyone knew why. Sophia struggled. To find her voice, she stood up slowly, her hands shaking. I didn't know," she said softly. "I'm sorry I had no idea who you were. Please forgive me." Mrs. Farida looked at Sophia, her face gentle. She spoke calmly. "Everyone deserves respect, no matter what job they do. I do not blame you for not knowing, but I hope you will. Remember this lesson." The family elder nodded. "Today, let us remember what truly matters. Not money or status, but kindness and respect for each other." The mood in the room changed. Some guests came forward to thank Mrs. Farida, while others apologized for ignoring her. The staff felt proud to work alongside her. Armand hugged his mother, tears running down his cheeks. He felt free for the first time in years. The truth was out, and he did not have to hide his love for his mother anymore, as the sun began to set. The family prepared for the wedding ceremony, but everyone's heart was different now. There was a new respect in the air, a sense of unity and forgiveness. And so, on the most important day of his life, Armand made a promise to himself. He would always honor his mother and never allow anyone to treat her with anything less than the respect she deserved. The real celebration was not just a wedding, but the coming together of hearts and the healing of old wounds. Let me know when you're ready for part 4, or if you want any changes to this part. Of course, Here is part 4, expanded to about 1,300 words. In simple, engaging English, continuing the story with emotion and gentle drama, keeping the audience interested and avoiding any inappropriate content. After Armin revealed the truth about his mother, the atmosphere in the grand hall was completely changed. It was as if time stood still. Everyone in the room was quiet, not knowing what to say or do. Sophia stood near her mother, her eyes wide with shock, while her hands trembled slightly. While she looked at Mrs. Farida, and suddenly remembered every sharp word and impatient look she had sent her way. Now each memory felt heavy, and a wave of regret swept through her heart. Some guests felt uncomfortable, looking at each other and whispering. The elder aunt watched over the room, wanting to make sure no one tried to hide from the truth. She knew that the real test of character came not from how people treated the rich or powerful, but how they acted toward those who seemed to have no voice. Armand gently led his mother to a chair and sat beside her. Holding her hand, he spoke. Quietly, but everyone could hear the strength and love in his voice. All my life, my mother has shown me what it means to work hard, to forgive, and to treat people with kindness. I hope that from today, everyone in this family can follow her example. Sophia's father cleared his throat and spoke up. We did not know who you were, Mrs. Farida. Please forgive us if we ever showed you disrespect. Today we learn an important lesson, the elder aunt added. Let us all thank Mrs. Farida, not only for her hard work, but also for her patience and her quiet strength. She has made this house a home, even when she had every reason to walk away. Sophia listened, feeling more ashamed with each word. Tears gathered in her eyes, but she blinked them away, too proud to cry in front of so many people. Finally, she stepped forward and knelt before Mrs. Farida, something no one expected the proud bride to do. Her voice was soft and trembling. I am sorry for everything, for every time I spoke rudely or looked down on you. I did not know you were Armand's mother, but that is not an excuse. I should have treated you with respect from the start. Can you forgive me, Mrs. Farida's eyes were gentle as she reached out and lifted Sophia's hands into her own. She spoke slowly and clearly so everyone could hear. Child, respect is not just for those you know or love. It is for everyone. Life will teach us many lessons, and sometimes the hardest ones are the most important. I forgive you, and I hope you will grow to be kinder and stronger because of this day. Sophia's tears finally fell, and she nodded, promising to change. The family members watching this scene felt touched by the honesty and humility in the room. Some of the older guests wiped their eyes. They whispered to each other that this wedding was different from any they had ever attended, not just because of the decorations, but because of the truth that was now out in the open. The rest of the staff stood at the back, surprised and proud. To see Mrs. Farida's strength, one of the young maids whispered, "She is more than we ever knew." The cook smiled softly, feeling happy that the secret she had kept was now shared with the family after the emotional moment. The elder aunt called everyone to sit and share tea together. The mood was gentle and warm. People spoke in low voices, but there was a new sense of respect in the room. Instead of talking about money or status, the guests spoke about kindness, about the importance of family, and about the lessons they would take home from this wedding. Armand and Sophia sat together. For the first time that day, Sophia looked at Armand, her eyes full of regret, but also hope. "Do you still want to marry me after everything that has happened?" she asked quietly. Armand took a long breath. "I want to marry a woman who respects people, not just because they are rich or powerful, but because they are human. Today you showed courage. You admitted your mistake and asked for forgiveness. That is not easy to do. If you are truly ready to change, I am ready to walk forward with you." Sophia nodded, feeling a small hope grow in her chest. "I promise to change, Armand. Your mother's words have touched my heart. I never want to hurt anyone like that again." Family listened to their words and saw that a new chapter was beginning for the young couple. Sophia's parents, who had always focused on social status and appearances, now felt a sense of humility. They apologized to Mrs. Farida as well, thanking her for caring for Armand and for teaching everyone such an important lesson. As the sun began to set, the wedding planners gently reminded the family that the ceremony was supposed to begin soon, but nobody wanted to rush this new moment of unity and understanding. The guests helped each other to the garden, talking more softly and treating the staff with kindness. Even Sophia's friends, who used to follow her lead, now smiled at the maids and said thank you. In a quiet moment, Armand sat with his mother in the garden. He thanked her for her patience, her love, and her wisdom. "You have given me the greatest gift, Amy. Not just life, but the knowledge of how to live it well." Mrs. Farida smiled. "I did what any mother would do, Beta. But today, I am proud. Not just of you, but of everyone here. This is a family that can learn and change." The wedding ceremony, when it finally began, felt very different from before. There were still beautiful lights, music, and laughter, but now there was also a feeling of peace. Sophia walked down the aisle, her eyes meeting Mrs. Farida's with respect. When she reached the end, she thanked every worker who had helped her, including the florists, the cooks, and the maids. The guests clapped softly, understanding how much the moment meant. After the ceremony, there was a simple but joyful dinner in the garden. Instead of speeches about wealth and success, people shared stories of kindness and forgiveness. Even the children listened quietly, sensing the importance of the day. As the night grew dark and the stars came out, Mrs. Farida finally allowed herself to rest. She sat alone for a moment on a garden bench, listening to the distant sound of music and laughter. Her heart felt light for the first time in many years. She knew she would no longer need to hide in the shadows or keep her love for her son secret. Sophia joined her, sitting down quietly. "I call you Amy too?" she asked softly. Mrs. Farida smiled, tears shining in her eyes. "Of course, child. Today we are all family." Together they watched Armand greeting guests, a proud smile on his face. The journey had not been easy, and there were still lessons to learn. But for the first time, everyone in the family understood that true greatness comes not from wealth or fame, but from the simple act of treating others with kindness and respect. The night ended with everyone gathered together, sharing stories and laughter under the stars. The pain of the past slowly faded, replaced by hope for the future. And in that moment, surrounded by family and new friends, Mrs. Farida felt at peace. Knowing her secret was no longer a burden, but a bridge that had brought everyone closer together. Let me know if you're ready for part 5 or need any changes. Of course, here is part 5, expanded to about 1,300 words, simple and engaging English, the positive and heartwarming conclusion. The morning after the wedding felt different in the mansion. Sunlight slipped quietly through the curtains, and the air was filled with a peaceful silence, as if the house itself was resting after so much excitement and emotion. The guests who had stayed overnight slowly woke up and came down for breakfast. But there was none of the usual rush or tension that had filled the previous days in the kitchen. The staff worked in a new spirit of calm and togetherness. The cook prepared breakfast, humming softly, and the young maids laughed gently as they arranged fruit and bread on platters. Mrs. Farida moved among them, no longer just as a maid, but as someone everyone respected. People greeted her kindly, asking if she had rested and if she needed any help. For the first time, the lines between servant and family seemed to blur. There was only kindness and gratitude for everyone who had helped to make the wedding a success. Sophia came to the kitchen early. She wore a simple dress and had tied her hair back, looking much softer and humbler than she had in the days before. She helped the maids carry plates to the dining room, saying thank you and smiling warmly. When she saw Mrs. Farida, she walked over and greeted her with a respectful "Good morning, Amy." The other maids exchanged happy glances. Seeing how much Sophia had changed in just one day, Armand joined them soon after, looking relaxed and happy. He hugged his mother and thanked the kitchen staff for their hard work. "This house feels different now, doesn't it?" he said to Sophia. She nodded, her eyes shining with hope. "Yes, it feels like a real home." After breakfast, the family and their guests gathered in the garden to enjoy the fresh morning air. The children played near the rose bushes there, laughter ringing out across the grass. The elders sat together, sipping tea and talking about the events of the previous day. Everyone agreed that something special had happened, not just a wedding, but a true change of heart within the family. Armin's friends came to him and said, "We never knew your mother was so wise and gentle. You are very lucky." Armin smiled. Proudly, "Yes, I am. She taught me everything important in life." Sophia's friends, too, came to Mrs. Farida to apologize for any rudeness or ignorance, promising to be more thoughtful in the future, as the guests prepared to leave for their own homes. They hugged Armand and Sophia and thanked the whole family for their hospitality. Many said this was the most memorable wedding they had ever attended, not because of the expensive decorations or food, but because of the lessons of kindness and respect that they had witnessed. Even the drivers and gardeners were thanked and given gifts, and everyone left with warm hearts. With the wedding over, life in the mansion slowly returned to normal. But something had changed forever. Sophia started spending more time in the kitchen, in garden, learning from Mrs. Farida about cooking, cleaning, and even how to care for the plants. She wanted to understand the work and respect it, not just give orders from a distance. Sometimes she made mistakes, spilling flour or dropping a dish, but now she laughed at herself, and everyone laughed with her, helping her learn. Mrs. Farida no longer slept in the small room near the back of the house. She was given a large and comfortable bedroom with bright windows overlooking the garden. Armand wanted everyone to know that his mother was now the respected elder of the family. The staff, and even the neighbors, began calling her Amie. As a sign of honor and affection, one afternoon, Armand and Sophia sat with Mrs. Farida under the big mango tree in the yard. Sophia gently placed her head in Mrs. Farida's lap and said, "Thank you for forgiving me, Amie. I will try every day to make you proud and to treat everyone with respect, just as you do." Mrs. Farida stroked Sophia's hair and replied, "We all make mistakes, child. What matters is that we learn from them. The heart grows wiser when it is open to change." Armin smiled, feeling more at peace than ever before. "Our family is strong now because we know the truth and because we love each other," he said. The staff and the rest of the family saw these changes and followed the example. There were no more harsh words or looks of superiority. Instead, the staff were invited to join family celebrations, to eat together on special occasions, and to share stories about their own families. The children grew up knowing that every person in the house, no matter their job, deserved respect and kindness. A few months after the wedding, Mrs. Farida decided to retire from her duties as a maid. Armin and Sophia encouraged her to rest and enjoy life. The family organized a small party to honor her. There was music and food, and everyone spoke about what Mrs. Farida meant to them. The young maids thanked her for teaching them not just how to work, but how to live with honesty and patience. The cook hugged her and said, "You are the mother of this house." After her retirement, Mrs. Farida became involved in the community, helping poor children learn to read and teaching young women how to take pride in their work. She often invited neighbors to the mansion for tea, sharing her wisdom and making everyone feel welcome. Sophia found a new sense of purpose as well. She started a small charity with Armand, helping to provide jobs and education for people in need. Whenever she made decisions, she asked for Mrs. Farida's advice. Slowly, she grew into a leader not because of her family's wealth, but because of her character and kindness. People in the town began to admire her for her gentle strength and her willingness to help others. Armand's business also flourished, but he never let success make him arrogant. He remembered his mother's words every day: "Kindness is the root of every good thing." He treated his workers like family and made sure they were always respected. Together, Armand, Sophia, and Mrs. Farida built a home where love, respect, and understanding were more important than money or status. They welcomed people from all walks of life and made sure no one ever felt less because of their background. Years later, when new families came to visit the mansion, they would hear the story of the weddings a day when a secret changed everything, and love healed old wounds. Children listened, wide-eyed as their parents told them. This house became a real home when everyone learned to treat each other like family. And so, the story of Mrs. Farida, Armand, and Sophia became a lesson for everyone who heard it. It was a reminder that greatness comes not from what we own, but from how we treat others. True respect cannot be bought, only earned through kindness and a humble heart. The mansion stood tall and beautiful, but its greatest treasure was not gold or jewels. Its greatest treasure was the love and respect that filled its walls born from truth, forgiveness, and the courage to change. Let me know if you'd like another story, summary, or any adjustments to this part.